Hi, my name is Emmy, and for our presentation today, I will be discussing the model minority myth and its overall connection to the novel Interior Chinatown by Charles Yu. Generally, this term is unheard of, so what exactly is it? The model minority myth pertains to the stereotypes that are applied to Asian Americans in their day-to-day life. Typically, it is to do with Asian Americans being seen as academically inclined with generalizations and remarks such as all Asians are good at math or all Asians play the violin or any form of instruments, which are typically just not true. So, what is the origin of such a stereotype? Well, the model minority myth was a term started around the 1950s and 1960s to basically stamp other ethnic minorities during the civil rights movement as the problematic minority in order to help their image during the Cold War as fighters for a better life or, quote unquote, to fight communism and bring democracy to the rest of the world. The truth behind this is that Asian Americans had just gone through federal levels of discrimination during the Second Civil War, and it was not until the 1940s, after the Chinese Exclusion Act was repealed, that they later let Japanese Americans out of concentration camps and told to basically reintegrate into society, which just created the idea that Asian Americans were all around passive to the issues happening against them and other minority groups in the United States. Chinese and Japanese Americans, because of that, were seen as passive and hardworking and silent during the 50s and 60s, which later gained them the title of the model minority by the American News. Along with that, Times Magazine more famously having the article titled The New Whiz Kids in 1987, which also just brought more attention to the term, but in a negative way. Sarah Suling Blackburn shares a story of her own experience regarding the model minority myth. She states that when she was in her junior year of high school, she had a math teacher who had ignored her struggle in the subject, unlike all the other students in her class who had received help. Her struggle in the class led her to stop trying altogether, stating that she felt the expectation to be this model minority was too great of a pressure on her. Chen Wen Yu also provided an interesting insight on her own TED Talk titled I Am Not Your Asian Stereotype, stating that Asian Americans play a strange role in the American melting pot. We are the model minority. Society uses our success to put us against other people of color as justification that racism doesn't exist. What does that mean for us Asians? It just means that we are not quite similar enough to be accepted, but we aren't different enough to be loaded. The impact of this stereotype, the model minority myth, it lies in its inability to allow Asian Americans their own individual identities and characteristics in both real life and in the media. To state it plainly, it is just altogether harmful. We see examples of this in the novel Interior Chinatown by Charles Yu, where the main character of the book, Willis, speaks about his dreams of becoming Kung Fu Guy, which he states is the biggest role Hollywood would give an Asian American such as himself. Him and others he knows plays roles such as generic Asian man and girl with almond eyes, all while having to play these roles with an accent that they do not have. The book gives a commentary on the issue itself. The roles offer no individuality to a real-life person outside of stereotypes. Alan Chen, as we know in the book, is the epitome of the myth. He was attacked for being Asian. He was nearly beaten to death, and he was racially profiled, but he kept silent and resilient all throughout. He went to MIT for his doctorate degree. He starred in American Dream Immigrant Success Story, and he lived amongst the whites in the suburbs. He basically achieves what is known to be the American dream. On the outside, he's what every Asian aspires to be. In the inside, however, He's repressed his emotions, and we know that in the end, he kills himself because of the pressure he endured all his life in the United States. As for statistically, according to the Pew Research Center, 7 in 10 Asian adults who are 1.5 to second generation have said that others have presumed that they were excellent at math or science, in contrast with the first generation having at least 50% and 46% of the third generation that have experienced this. Sustaining this harmful stereotype over and over again, disregarding that people are people and that they have their own characteristics that make them who they are, regardless of what they look like, will only ever add to the minority myth and keep its harmful effects in place. When you think of the model minority myth, I think the best example would be Alan. I'm not saying that most Asians will kill themselves in the end, but it is a big example of what will happen, maybe statistically, if the stereotype were to keep on going on. Thank you for watching.